These reports about the Big 12 stealing prominent programs from the ACC like Clemson and Florida State continue to gain more and more buzz. Are we buying it?
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, and shout out to the everydayers for making Locked On ACC your first listen or your first watch today. We're here free wherever you get your podcasts. We're available free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sports have stopped sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. On this episode, we will talk about whether the football identity of the ACC may change drastically this season if you look at the makeups of the top teams around the conference. The ACC did score a victory, we'll call it a dub, over Clemson in court. People are always wondering, because we talk so much about Florida State's legal cases, what's going on with Clemson? We have a little bit more on that, but we'll start with this continued. This is Kenton. The internet has, for the last 48 hours, just been absolutely flooded with all this Big 12 buzz. Florida State and Clemson going to the Big 12. He's Kenton Gibbs, by the way, from Locked On Wolfpack. I am Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. So Kenton, I don't know how many people would actually be happy if this were to happen. Obviously, you know, the rest of the teams within the ACC themselves would hate to lose Florida State and Clemson, but I also don't know how happy Florida State and Clemson fans would be, because they all want to go to the Big Ten or the SEC, but are you even buying these rumors?
I am not buying these rumors. Alexa, Siri, every device that I have, play the song by Labyrinth, I'm Tired, because Lord knows that I am damn tired of hearing these rumors. These don't even make sense. Donno, I want you to seriously think about this, right? I was talking about this may be the most expensive break-even moment in all of human history. But I really want you to think about this for a second, okay? If the Big 12 had the money, had the resources to do this type of big one all along, why didn't they give it to Texas and Oklahoma?
Right.
If they had a viable route to say, hey, we're going to pay to keep a top dog in the conference. We're going to pay to get a top dog in the conference. As the old saying goes, it's cheaper to keep her. It would have been cheaper to keep Oklahoma and Texas than to be named the Big 12 by red herring equity in order to get Florida State and Clemson. This is idiotic. It's foolish. I am excited for Clemson and FSU fans to go to the conference they want to go to. I really am. I want them to go wherever they want to go. And I know that all serious FSU and Clemson fans are not believing or buying or even looking at this Big 12 stuff. But I'll be damned if there is nothing else going on in the sports cycle. So we got to talk about, well, are they going to the Big 12? Again, this would be the most idiotic move. And I didn't even think about the Big 12 angle of how it was idiotic until last night. It hit me in my sleep like, wait, why would I kid you not, I woke up at like 3 a.m. like, if they had the money, wouldn't they just pay Texas and Oklahoma?
That's a great point. I guess the counterpoint would be private equity was not even a discussion of being reality in college football then. So like the idea of borrowing money back then was not even an option, and apparently it is now. Not that we support the idea of putting yourself in debt to bring Florida State and Clemson, but I don't think, maybe if they had the private equity option 3-4 years ago, they might have kept Oklahoma and Texas.
Well, here's the thing, right? And again, correct me if I'm wrong here, Donno. What has happened in the world? Private equity existed in 2020. I know for a fact It did, because I worked at a private equity-backed startup shortly after that. Very shortly after. I know for a fact it existed in the past. What happened all of a sudden that everybody says, let's go to private equity for this? Again, you and I both know this would be one of the worst decisions in college football history, to go ahead and say, hey, we're going to go to private equity for this money to add these teams in our conference. You and I both know that. But let's just say for kicks and giggles, they go ahead and do it, and there are no ill effects. Okay, great. Now you have two teams in the Big 12 that are objectively outsiders. Texas and Oklahoma were the Big 12 in essence. They were everything about them extremely Big 12. Extremely Big 12. You have two teams coming in, not it at all. Not it at all. But I think, and I'm going to say something here, and I hope nobody gets offended by this, but I know somebody is because that's the nature of the beast. There would be no more 2024 America of a moment than to have these two teams go over to the Big 12. You want to know why?
Right. Why?
Backwards, committing idiocracy, doing dumbness just for dumbness, but we've got the money to do it, so why not? Why not? Everybody involved in this thing will have been hustling backwards because private equity is a loan, and it is not a loan that you can just keep re-upping and re-upping and re-upping and re-upping. At some point in time, I've discussed all the scenarios, privately here, but let's talk about them on there, right? The possibility of private equity. Okay, so the possibility is being talked about. They pay for Florida State. They pay for Clemson, potentially Notre Dame, Miami, which I really think is super far out there, but let's just stick with Florida State. Clemson. They pay for those two, right? Everybody else allegedly gets $15 million more per year. Donno, how long is that sustainable? How many years can they afford to get? How many billions do they think that these private equity firms are willing to just say, here you go, we believe in you, go for it?
Well, the TV deal, which I think they're with both Fox and ESPN. I'm not a Big 12 expert, but I think they would need to renegotiate their TV, which don't run as long as the ACC's TV deal, but they would need to count on banking a lot more TV money a few years down the road to pay back the private equity.
Okay, so we're in the mode of I'm already in the deficit, but we still haven't even explained, hey, how do you get the additional $15 million to 16 different teams? 16.
Yeah.
That is $240 million per year. I don't give a damn how long your TV deal runs, unless you know I am coming down the pipeline with billions from outside of this very shortly. It's not sustainable. Because mind you, on top of paying everybody else an additional 15, Florida State and Clemson are supposed to be the most handsomely paid teams in all of college football at the end of this deal. Right. So mind you, we just talked about that part of it in terms of $240 million per year for just the 16 that are already there. Now add in the two that you said you want to make the richest in college football. How do you make that out? You talk about the 240 plus, let's say 40 apiece for both of those teams, right? That puts you at 80 plus 240. That's 320 a year. A year.
Now, I don't believe, I want to continue this conversation on the other side because I don't believe that actually making them the richest in college football is realistic and feasible. No. But and also, I don't want us to be, and we're not, some of these clickbait merchants out there who are just gonna, they're gonna milk this. And obviously we're talking about it, but I do want to remind people how this buzz started in the first place, because I think the origin of this is incredibly important. And it's why I'm not buying these rumors more than 10, 15%. I think this is a contingency. I think Florida State and Clemson, it's not impossible they wind up in the Big 12, but this isn't something that's happening, and it's not something that's happening anytime soon. We'll continue here. Locked On ACC, we have a lot more to talk about. We're only getting started on this Friday on the Locked On Podcast Network. Passion, drive, and patience. Guys, these are the qualities that bring home championships, and they're also what keep your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. For your second listen and watch, make sure you check out the other shows that Kenton and I do. He does an awesome job co-hosting Locked On Wolfpack. I do my best hosting Locked On Canes. You can check those shows out each and every day on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your pods. Because guess what, guys? The Locked On Network, we've got, I think, over 200 shows. We are taking over the world one show at a time. Make sure you check out our shows on the Locked On Podcast Network. So, Kenton, I want to remind folks out there that, again, all this Big 12 hysteria this week, this started based on comments made by, yes, a very reputable college football reporter who I respect, Ross Dellenger. But he even said after he made these comments that this was in no way meant to be him breaking news. Like, he was hypothesizing. And he also laid out the situation in context where people are ignoring the context, because Ross Dellenger clearly said the number one option for Florida State and Clemson will be to wind up in the Big Ten or the SEC. And if I had to make a prediction, I would predict they're going to end up probably both in the Big Ten. We just don't think it's going to happen within the next year or two. We think it's going to be a while before this process plays out. So he mentioned their number one option would be to wind up in the Big Ten or SEC. The number two option would actually be like a reformed ACC where you choose some of the fat and you're splitting revenue with fewer teams. And then the third option would be making a move to the Big 12. I think that context is important. And the fact that Dellenger was hypothesizing, not breaking news. Now, he did say he believes that preliminary early discussions may have taken place with the Big 12, with Florida State and Florida State and Clemson. Now, that would not surprise me, Kenton, because we know the Big 12. The Big 12 is super aggressive. Like Brett Yormark, their commissioner, he wants the Big 12. He wants to make them Big 3 along with the SEC and Big 10. So believe me, they are open to that. And obviously, if there's back channel discussions happening, you wouldn't blame Florida State and Clemson for saying, let's have all our ducks in the row. This is not our first choice or our second choice, but we better have our fail-safe option ready in case our top two choices don't play out for us, right? So I believe that's what's happening. And if that's what's happening, that has now turned the internet into, they're going to the Big 12. It's happening. It's happening tomorrow. Like, we're several steps away from that, including several steps in the legal process of those schools even being able to exit the ACC.
Absolutely. And like you said, I want to touch on what you said earlier with making them the richest is not realistic. I'm sorry. I was incorrect on my original estimate of having to pay them $40 million each. In order to make them the richest, the biggest payout at the moment is the SEC at about a little over 51 million per year. We'll round it off to say 50. To make you substantially more paid than them, we'll boost you up to, let's say, 55. I feel like 55 is enough to where you're like, oh, we're the richest. Look at us. So that's 110 for them, 240 for the conference. That puts you at a total of 350 per year. That is $1 billion over 3 years. That is over $1 billion over 3 years. I'm sorry to tell you all, again, I do not know where people are getting these ideas from. I do not know where people are getting these ideas. And again, I don't want anybody to interpret this as me and Donno saying Florida State and Clemson are going to be in the ACC forever. Donno and I both believe that by the start of the 2027-2028 football seasons, these schools will be in another conference. We both wholeheartedly believe that. That's not something that we shy away from and are like, oh, you're a liar if you believe otherwise. With that being said, this Big 12, it's a weasel, it's a wazoo, it's a fugazi, it's a fugazi. It doesn't exist. Sure, Yormark has made the call. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Donno's house shopping right now. I'm sure that he's made the call to some $1 million real estate guy like, hey, what you got for me? And they said, oh, yeah, sure. We got tons of things that are in your budget.
By the way, quick sidebar. There's been a lot of drama with that because we thought we'd found like our dream house at a reasonable price.
Yeah.
Then we had the inspection. And there was a lot of lipstick on the pig there, and we had to back out of that offer. So the house shopping is wide open again.
Well, Lord forbid if the Big 12 does some inspections on certain universities that are allegedly joining, but I digress. We're not going to talk about who may be headed for a downward slope very soon here. What we will talk about is, again, the objective truth of what is going on with realignment. Like you said, the numbers don't make sense. You're paying out $1 billion over 3 years. I don't know how long their TV deal is. I know it lasts longer than 3 years. So they're not going to get this new push of money like, hey, we're going to go ahead and just flood you with money there. And even when they do get the new TV deal, do you think it'll be enough for them to comfortably pay out that a year? And do you think that those other schools will be happy with Clemson and Florida State both making over $10 million more than them a year? Come on. Let's get real here. Let's get real. And like you said, the biggest thing that most people are ignoring, we're still in court. Only one of these cases is even at discovery. There are 5. 20% of the ACC lawsuits are at discovery. Think about that for a second.
Yeah, I do. So I want to play devil's advocate on the Big 12 side on how this could happen for them. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but so the scenario where Florida State and Clemson would wind up in the Big 12 would be literally that would only happen if the Big 10 and the SEC decide, no thanks. We are not interested in expanding. We thought about it. I mean, obviously they've just both expanded, but we're not interested in expanding further anytime soon. Because there have been some rumblings from both sides, like college football reporters that that are very reputable. We've heard Paul Feinbaum say, for example, that the SEC is not interested in Florida State and Clemson because they already have the footprint in Florida and South Carolina, and that they only want to expand, I guess, to areas where they don't already have a footprint. And then on the Big Ten side of it, I know a lot of people have argued that this isn't going to be a deciding factor, but there has been some buzz that Florida State could have an issue getting in because of academics, because they're not an AAU accredited school, which is typically a prerequisite for the Big Ten. Would not surprise me if the Big Ten waived that because money outweighs academic prestige, right? So, but still, that there have been thoughts on both sides that maybe, hey, not so fast, my friends, in terms of these conferences being ready to bring new teams in. So if that were the case, if we're a little unsure if the SEC and Big Ten want to expand further, we know the Big 12 does. Like, there is no question. So if it just simply came down to dollars and cents, can we make a little more money over there than we can make over here? And also, bridges burned, Kenton, because it'd be kind of hard to stay in the ACC when you've already paid a lot of legal fees and put in a lot of time and effort and venom and vitriol into trying to leave the ACC. So if the Big 12 is literally their only viable option outside of the ACC, that's the only way this happens. Oh, you're muted.
For sure, but at that point, you're putting yourself in such a position of weakness. You are having to take whatever the Big 12 comes with, whatever they come with. And if we're talking about the scenario which is being prompted, where the Big 12 gets them and they become the richest schools in terms of TV debt, it is quite literally impossible. Impossible. Listen, don't make me break out my Brandy and Whitney Houston impressions because I can't sing like they can sing. But the reality is very simple here. The Big 12 TV deal runs through 2030, 2031. That deal in total, and this is not me laughing because the amount is small. It's me laughing because the reality of this just doesn't make sense here. The long-term contract renewal is understood to be worth just over $2 billion and will include a sizable payout to these schools. Now, Donno, if the payout as it is right now is $2 billion, okay, and they're going to have to come up with the additional figures that I just said, because again, you're stuck till 2030, 2031. How? Because you can't, it just, again, the math doesn't math. And if there is a situation where Clemson and Florida State go to the Big 12, this is going to be a black eye on both of those universities for quite some time because they will have paid millions of dollars to, in essence, break even. You will have paid millions of dollars to not be in a conference that's just booming and taking off and all that good stuff. And again, I very strongly believe that one of those teams, they are very close to a cliff, a free fall off a cliff that we are all kind of quiet about because their Bible thumping coaches won a couple national championships, but we're refusing to acknowledge, hey, their trajectory is not that anymore. That's just not where they are anymore. Again, if they prove me wrong, I'll shut my fat self up. But if they don't, if we see another 10-9, nowhere near the conference championship year, that may be a little bit of a problem for them. It maintains relevancy, but it does not maintain the type of relevancy that makes you worthy of, this acclaim of richest school in America in terms of TV payout, or worthy of saying, hey, the ACC is beneath us. It just doesn't.
So in terms of the legal process, by the way, because people are always wondering what's going on with the Clemson cases, because the Florida State cases get a lot more publicity. This week, I'll call it a victory for the ACC, but an expected victory. And because the cases between Clemson and the ACC are very much following the trajectory of the cases between Florida State and the ACC. So, remember, the ACC, they are suing Clemson in North Carolina as Clemson is suing the ACC in South Carolina. Clemson filed for a motion to dismiss the case in North Carolina, which is the friendlier venue for the ACC, because much like Florida State in Florida, Clemson would like the case only to go forward in their home state of South Carolina. There's, much like in Florida with Florida State, there are going to be two cases going simultaneously, Kenton, because Judge Bledsoe in North Carolina ruled this week against Clemson's motion to dismiss the ACC's lawsuit against the university, which again is expected. The same way we expected the judge in Florida to rule against the ACC's motion to dismiss, and vice versa, we expected the North Carolina judge to rule against Clemson's motion to dismiss. So that case will move forward. In fact, I think there's a hearing today in South Carolina, so that will continue to move forward on both of those fronts. I guess, Kenton, again, if we're tracking the jabs, no one's landed a haymaker yet still, but if we're tracking the jabs, that was a jab successfully landed by the ACC, that the case with Clemson will continue to move forward in the friendlier venue for the conference.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That is 1,000% certain what we're looking at here. Like you said, it's a jab. It's just peppering you, filling you out, controlling distance, all that type of thing, because this isn't the moment where we're expecting anybody to go down or anybody to bow out and say, you know what, we'll be in the conference for a lot longer. We'll just have to stick around for all of what you said. It's, these are, yes, it's a court win, but it's a court win in the sense that the case can keep going. It's not a court win in the sense that, like, haha, we have a smoking gun against Clemson to say, you all are wrong and da-da-da. It's not that. It's a very light, hey, the case can still go forward type of deal. And that is obviously important, because obviously if your motion to dismiss is accepted or is granted, then yes, that's the ultimate haymaker. That's the ultimate, haha, we're right, you're wrong, no case for you, but our case is going forward type of deal, but we're just not there.
And we would have been shocked if that motion was granted, by the way.
Absolutely.
So just so people know, this is a small win, but a very expected win for the ACC in court. And I want to go back real quick to something about Florida State and the Big 12, because I want to calm down Florida State fans a little bit, because I know most of them, obviously they want to get out of the ACC, but they don't want to go to the Big 12. So, the same day that these rumors start coming around about Florida State to the Big 12, we get word of the Florida State Board of Trustees. Because remember, the Board of Trustees, that's the specific body that is suing the ACC. It's the Board of Trustees. It's not the athletic director. It's not the president. It's the Board of Trustees. So the Board of Trustees scheduled a meeting on July 22nd where people are saying, oh my gosh, is this going to be when they confirm they want to go to the Big 12? I'm not even sure if athletics will be discussed in that meeting, because this was this X post was sent out by Ryan Kelly, who is the director of WCTV Sports, who actually bothered to post some context here. He says, regarding the FSU Board of Trustees meeting that has been making the rounds tonight, he says, a university spokesperson has told us the meeting was previously scheduled to approve the university's 2025-2026 legislative budget request. So that doesn't sound to me like they called an emergency meeting to talk about conference realignment. It sounds like they already had a meeting scheduled to talk about the budget that doesn't specifically pertain to athletics.
This meeting will be one of the boring ones that we don't want to watch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
Donno and I are sickos in this way that we watched the entirety of the one where, there was a lot of table pounding and we need to leave and all that. Donno and I watched that. This won't be that.
We did.
This will not be
And
that.
we watched that North Carolina Zoom meeting a couple months ago that was very awkward.
Oh, boy. I'll tell you what. It was already hard enough to sit through Dirty Foot Clubbers talking, but Jesus, it was... We just, the only joy that I gained from that was understanding that they have no clue what's going on with their own budget. Good for them. Anyway, the reality is this is boring. This is procedural. This is very like, ho-hum, we're approving the thing that we said we're going to approve. All opposed or all for say aye. You're going to get a bunch of ayes. All opposed say nays. People are going to be silent. Bang, bang, bang. That's it.
Well, when we come back, I want to talk a little ball because I'm getting an idea based on the personnel, what the identity of ACC football is going to be like this season, and I like it. Maybe some of you don't, but I like it. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Oh, and we're certainly not done yet with FanDuel. Guys, we've been winning money this summer. Baseball games, international soccer, been placing bets on Wimbledon. I know that since the NBA Finals and Stanley Cup Finals have wrapped up, the sports may not be sportsing the way that you like them to, but FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And all summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com. Start making the most out of your summer. I do like, I've been watching Euro 2024 because I'm a soccer nerd. And Spain has been consistently the best team there. I've got them minus 135 to beat England in the final. So if you want to bet along with me, visit FanDuel.com to look at odds. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch day. All right, so Kenton, I'm looking at some of the quarterbacks that have left the conference, either on their way to the pros or on their way elsewhere. Riley Leonard left Duke to go to Notre Dame. Drake May, Jordan Travis, who both had spectacular seasons last year, are off to the pros. And then I also look at line of scrimmage play for a lot of ACC teams. I think the outlook is very bright this year. And, we used to talk about there was a number of years up until recently where you'd say the ACC is just loaded with quarterbacks, right? I think this year you say the ACC is especially loaded with running backs, right? Damian Martinez and Jaden Ott come into the conference from the Pac-12. Amari Hampton is still going to be a stud. Like, there's a ton of backs in this conference. Do you think the identity of ACC football this year is going to be more physical line of scrimmage play? Oh, my bad. I had you muted. I'm sorry.
I was about to say, wait a minute. I didn't have myself muted that time. Oh, what's going on?
We're two for two. You had yourself muted. I had you muted.
It was the Big 12 conspiring against us. That's what we'll say, okay? It was the fake news Big 12 media conspiring against us. But anyway, the reality is very simple here. Like you talked about, not only are the quarterbacks leaving, but there's an influx of running back talent that either stayed or is coming in. You talked about Jay Nod. You talked about Damian Martinez. You talked about Amari Hampton. You could also talk about Jordan Waters, an all-conference guy staying home. You could talk about Byshaw Tootin, a guy that is going to be a special running back up there for Virginia Tech, and all that he brings in terms of that, dynamic read option with him and drones and how scary that is for defenses. You have a situation where
Phil Maffa at Clemson,
just a low,
yeah,
and that's the thing. Sometimes your best gets are the ones you already got. And in terms of the ACC, there are some absolutely phenomenal backs that were already here. Don't get me wrong, Jay Knott, if he's even, he's leaving. The man is shot out of a cannon every time he makes that one cut. If he sees that hole, he's gone. There's nothing you can do about it. You'll just be looking at one dancing in the end zone. But with that being said, there are so many good backs in this conference. And I believe Preston Stone is a good quarterback. I believe he is. I think he's the only quarterback that we gained in terms of the expansion that's really quality. Yes, we gained some. I said
Ward,
expansion.
come
I said
on.
expansion.
Oh,
I was
okay,
just
I
about
got
to
you,
say
I got you.
via transfer portal,
Yeah.
we got Cam
fair.
Ward. Grayson McCall is a transfer guy. I would never
Yeah,
disrespect the
yeah.
transfer. However, a passing game takes much more time to develop properly than a running game does. A running game is much easier to develop in terms of if you have personnel, ball will follow, than a passing game. I've talked about this ad nauseum, but look at Joe Burrow year one. That's the type of stuff I'm talking about in terms of passing game. The talent did not get exponentially better. Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson didn't become light years better in the next year than they were in year one. It's just that they had the timing, the rhythm. They understood each other better. So that's what passing games require. A running game, you need big, nasty, physical men that are willing to move other men against their will. That is a much easier proposition than, hey, we need to be on the same page in terms of when we're looking at this coverage, we need to be seeing the same thing. I need to know where you're going to stop. I need to know how you're going to deliver me the ball. Great. We'll figure it out together with the power of friendship. That is much harder to figure out than, hey, we want to move this guy. We want to move him and climb to the Mike linebacker. How about it? You know, that's a much different thing that you got going on there. So I honestly and truly think that we are kind of leaving that, I wouldn't say air raid, but quarterback drivenness of the league. And we are returning to old school meat and potatoes. Hey, sometimes you're going to have some games where you 3-yard and cloud and dust it out in the ACC.
Well, we're going to start in the coming weeks as we inch closer to the season. We're less than 50 days away from college football. We're going to start previewing teams within the ACC. Always a great time talking with Kenton Gibbs. Make sure you check him out on X at TGIF_Kenton. Make sure you check me out at Alex Donno, and we'll talk to you guys again next week on another episode of Locked On ACC, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.